Little remains of Alexei Vetrov's former life in Nizhny Novgorod. Some pictures of demonstrations, some files on his laptop. Alexei tells us that he's the one carrying the poster.
Nostalgia and bitterness. That's what I feel when I look at these pictures. I've had to move on. My old life is over.
Alexei fled Russia 2 years ago. Eventually, he ended up in this hostel in Kiev, Ukraine. Each of the rooms is shared by 10 people. For his 1.5 square meters, Alexei pays 40 euros a month in rent. In Russia, Alexei was a successful small business owner and a political activist, which landed him in jail. Right now, he's headed for a charity organization in Kiev. It helps to organize aid to eastern Ukraine. Alexei volunteers here, helping war victims over the phone.
Donbass SOS, this is Alexei. Hello? What's your name and how can I help you?
We accompany Alexei to the Russian embassy in Kiev. Alexei's been here before to protest against Putin. It's a place that arouses mixed feelings.
I'm not afraid here, no. But I still feel somewhat uneasy in Ukraine because Ukraine won't grant me asylum. They won't give me permission to stay here.
Alexei's application for asylum was turned down. He still doesn't understand why and believes the reasons he was given were just flimsy excuses. He's not alone in his plight. Since the annexation of Crimea, Ukraine has approved only about 5% of asylum applications from Russians. Next, Alexei pays a visit to Maxim Butkiewicz, a human rights activist who helps people obtain legal assistance. He's been seeing more and more Russian refugees. According to the United Nations, Alexei meets the criteria for refugee status.
Paradoxically, the UNHCR recognizes me as a refugee, but Ukraine doesn't, on the basis of the very same convention.
Maxim Butkiewicz says he's heard many similar stories. Ukraine's government dismisses such allegations, but its human rights ombudsman admits it's a complex situation.
We don't have a policy of rejecting asylum applications coming from people who have fled Russia. There is no such policy. But there are some difficulties associated with the current legal situation in Ukraine.
This legal situation also affects Russians who are supporting Ukraine in the conflict with Russia. For the Ukrainian government, they are still here illegally. These military vehicles were captured in the eastern Donbass region. We meet another Russian from Moscow who calls himself Iva. He's joined a right-wing Ukrainian volunteer regiment that is fighting the pro-Russian separatists.
I could be stopped on the street at any time and asked for my papers. I'd have to show them my Russian passport. And the way things are now, I could easily be passed on to the security services and deported.
Some in Ukraine worry that the Russian Secret Service might send in fake refugees. Aid organizations are familiar with these fears.
Of course, we understand very well that there are some security reasons probably that might be the floor for the rejections from the side of the migration service when the applications are considered.
For Russians who seek asylum in Ukraine, this mix of suspicion and bureaucratic hesitation can be an insurmountable hurdle. Alexei has his own explanation for why it's so hard for Russians to obtain asylum status in Ukraine.
They have plenty of political activists of their own, so why would they want Russian activists? The government sees them as a danger.
Alexei's only choice right now is to work as a courier. He rarely earns more than 50 or 60 euros a month. Alexei says he's worn out by the constant struggle of his life here in Kiev. He's now hoping to move on and try his luck with an asylum application in some other country.